In the struggles between empires, the details of small battles are usually lost in the noise of great confrontations. But there are moments that stand out not because of the scale of their impact, but because of what they symbolize. Cardenas Bay, a quiet corner in northern Cuba, became on May 11, 1898, the stage for a memorable act of resistance. During the Spanish-American War, a small Spanish flotilla commanded by Lieutenant Commander Domingo Montes Regueiferos faced the powerful naval fleet of the United States in a battle that no one expected to last more than a few minutes. Cardenas was not a strategic fortress. Objectively, it was a weak point in Spain's defenses. Yet it also became a demonstration of how, even in a moment of imperial decline, the will to fight can turn what seems like a lost cause into a lesson in resilience. While Spain struggled to hold on to the last jewels of its overseas empire, the United States sought to project its power into the Caribbean, eager for territories that would strengthen its influence in the region. The Spanish-American War was not simply a military conflict. It was a clash between two eras. Spain, with its centuries-long history and a fading empire, represented the old order trying to stay afloat. The United States, on the other hand, symbolized the new world with its advanced technology and relentless ambition. The arrival of the American fleet in the Caribbean was not only about securing military victory. It was also meant to send a message to the rest of the world. The future belonged to the nations that knew how to dominate the seas. The fleet approaching Cardenas embodied this philosophy. It was equipped with modern ships, advanced artillery, and a strong confidence in its technological superiority. In contrast, the Spanish defense relied on a small group of vessels designed more for patrol than for battle. It consisted of the tugboat Antonio Lopez and two lighter boats. The Spanish flotilla was modest even by the standards of its time. But what it lacked in firepower it made up for with the experience of its sailors and their knowledge of the terrain, something that would prove decisive in the critical moments. At the head of the resistance stood Domingo Montes, an officer whose record combined many years of naval experience with a deep understanding of maritime strategy. He was not a leader who relied on brute force. He understood that his only chance lay in taking advantage of every opportunity the environment offered. Montes impressed upon his men the importance of resistance beyond the strictly military sense. In a war where every American victory accelerated the fall of the Spanish Empire, every minute of resistance carried immense symbolic value. For the enemy, capturing Cardenas should have been an easy task. For the defenders, losing it would mean not only abandoning a port, but also surrendering part of their dignity as sailors and as a nation. The battle in Cardenas Bay was no ordinary confrontation. For Lieutenant Commander Domingo Montes and his small flotilla, it was about using geography to their advantage and turning their weaknesses into strengths. The bay, with its shallow waters and narrow channels, proved to be the perfect environment for lighter and more agile vessels. They could maneuver and hide, complicating the attacks of the larger and heavily armed ships of the US Navy. Realizing this natural advantage, Montes positioned his ships at strategic points, ready to endure with a precision that surprised his opponents. The Antonio Lopez, a tugboat converted into a warship, played a central role. Armed with a single cannon and operating under Montes's orders, the vessel became the key element of a strategy that did not aim to defeat the enemy outright, but to hold out long enough to disrupt their plans. Its two companion boats moved like chess pieces, carefully positioned, ready to reinforce vulnerable points or launch quick attacks from unexpected directions. The Spanish flotilla was far from powerful, but it proved that intelligent planning could challenge even the strongest opponent. When the American fleet began its advance on May 11, 1898, it did so with the confidence of a force that had already achieved significant victories on other fronts. The Winslow, a modern and agile torpedo boat, led the attack, followed by larger ships such as the Wilmington and the Hudson. Their objective was clear: crush the Spanish resistance and quickly take control of the bay. But the Spanish defenders did not yield to the enemy's obvious superiority. The first shot of the battle came from the Antonio Lopez. Taking advantage of its strategic position, it struck the Winslow before the torpedo boat could begin its attack maneuver. The hit damaged the ship's steering system, limiting its ability to maneuver and causing confusion among its crew. Minutes later, a second shot seriously wounded the commander of the Winslow and left the torpedo boat vulnerable, proving that the Spanish vessels were far from easy targets. As the Winslow struggled to recover, the rest of the American fleet intensified its attack. For hours, the guns of the larger ships bombarded Spanish positions. But Montes and his crew demonstrated an extraordinary ability to avoid direct hits. Although the Antonio Lopez suffered significant damage and even caught fire at one point, its crew remained calm and continued to respond with accurate shots, forcing the Americans to reconsider their strategy. The battle reached its critical moment when the strikes from the Antonio Lopez started a fire aboard the Winslow, eventually leaving the vessel completely out of action. Despite the efforts of the rest of the fleet to maintain the offensive, the morale of the attackers began to falter. The small Spanish flotilla, far from being quickly defeated, resisted far longer than any American commander had anticipated. The situation seemed unimaginable for the Americans, and they began bombarding the town itself, hoping to destroy non-existent hidden batteries that they believed were firing at them. Finally, Captain Chapman Zub, commanding the American forces, ordered a retreat. For the United States, leaving Cardenas Bay was a blow to naval pride, especially after suffering significant losses against a much smaller force. Among the casualties was Ensign Worth Bagley, the only American officer killed during the entire war. This turned the episode into an uncomfortable reminder that technological superiority does not always defeat determination. After about 2.5 hours of combat, the Wilmington withdrew with 2 hits, followed by the Hudson with 4 hits, which towed the damaged Winslow away with disabled engines and severe damage. This forced the U.S. Navy to eventually remove the vessel from service. For the Spanish, the resistance at Cardenas was more than a tactical achievement. It became a symbol of their ability to stand against a superior enemy even in a moment of imperial decline. Although the war would end with the loss of Cuba and other overseas territories, the Battle of Cardenas became an example of courage and naval ingenuity. Montes and his men were not simply defending a port. They were defending the honor of a navy facing its decline. The Americans, for their part, downplayed the incident, attributing their withdrawal to supposed powerful batteries hidden in the bay, batteries that had never existed. In doing so, they overshadowed the performance of the Spanish sailors from the peninsula. Yet the memory of Cardenas remained, a reminder that even in defeat, there are moments worth remembering. Here ends this story. Did you enjoy the video? What do you think about this war? You can watch more videos on my channel dedicated to history.